What is up, guys? It is Joe. We are back. We're talking ball about the Cats, specifically about football in this one. And I want to give a shout out to one of you guys for commenting on this past video to give me the idea for this one. This video is talking about the top 5 post-spring questions for K-State football heading into the 2024 season. And I want to give a shout out to my guy Blake for leaving this comment. Blake, thank you for watching. Thank you for the kind words. And I appreciate you for giving me this idea. I wanted to jump up because I made a video a couple of weeks ago talking about this, or I guess a couple months ago talking about this, and I gave my 5 questions for K-State football in 2024. Flash forward now, we're through the spring transfer portal cycle and all this stuff has already happened. These are my 5 questions for K-State football in the upcoming season. And I'll jump in here in a sec, but before I do, let me tell you this. Guys, I've decided what we're going to do with 3,000 subs. Usually I try to do a giveaway, usually try to do something just to give back, do something cool. I decided that at 3,000 subs, I'm going to go ahead and get the cat script. I know you've all seen it, but just in case you haven't, here's a picture. I'm going to get the cat script tattooed on my left thigh. I think it's one of the best looking logos that K-State's run with the last couple years. And at 3,000 subs, I will get this tattooed on my left thigh. So I know some of you guys might not be tattoo people, but I think it's been growing on me a lot lately. And I think the cat tat will look perfect in that spot on my left thigh. So if you're interested in seeing that, maybe we'll make it into a video. Maybe it'll just be a cool social media thing I update you guys with. Be sure and hit that subscribe button because at 3,000 subs, we're going to go ahead and get that thing done. As well as you get some content, you'll stick around and get to see it through the off season. But let me start off with question number 5. Now, I don't know if these are necessarily in order of like most pressing to least pressing or vice versa. They're just kind of in the order they came to my mind. So the first thing I thought of, I guess this is the 5th question, but we'll work our way up. The first question I want to ask, of the true freshmen that are committing to K-State, we've seen some people step onto the field and have impact. Now, I know it's not a situation where they're probably going to play, 10 games for K-State and then be on the field all the time, but there are some freshmen that get that role of, hey, we're going to play in 5-6 games in limited roles or, special teams here or there, do things in certain capacities. Which of the true freshmen coming to Kansas State this year will we see on the field for more than 3 games? That's the question. To redshirt, you need about, I think it's less than 3 games. Sometimes they'll give you that 4th. But in this case, I wanted to talk about which true freshman I think will take the field a couple of times this season. And the first names that came to my mind were Trey Davis, the receiver from Texas. I think there's a lot to be said about this wide receiver room for K-State. And you saw a guy like Jace Brown get on the field and be the best receiver for K-State football last season. I guess that's comparable with, Phillip Brooks, but you got to see a true freshman come on the field to make some work happen. Avery Johnson, similar thing. Obviously, there's a different role for Avery because he was operating behind Will Howard and in certain cases did become the starter. But on a season-to-season basis, you're not going to see a true freshman just step in and dominate. Like, I know that's kind of the idea of like, oh, Lincoln Cure is going to be incredible when he gets to K-State. Even top prospects like that usually need a year of, hey, let me get adjusted to the system, let me get adjusted to my role, see what I can do, and then go from there. Now, I'm not saying that's the rule. There are exceptions to the rule, but that's just a general way to look at it. Trey Davis is the first guy that came to my mind. Jaquez Spradley-Demps, the other receiver, came to my mind as well. He's a big-bodied dude. I think he'd be great in like a goal line fade situation. He's definitely someone that I'd be keeping my eye on. And then other names that popped into my head, I had Gus Hawkins on the offensive line. I'll talk about that in a second. And then I had Devon Rice, the running back, who a lot of people have been high on Devon Rice. I'm not going to sit here and say I've seen him play a ton, but he definitely has an alley to play on both special teams and in the running back room. I think there's a lot of talented running backs there. Gus Hawkins is interesting to me because that's a room of bulldogs. It's the best way I can say it. There's a room of dogs in that offensive line. That freshman class was so dominant on the offensive line. And I know you're going to have veterans and guys that have played a lot of college football up front, but Connor Riley isn't a guy that's shy. If you're the best player, you will play football right now. This is your moment. You need to step up and be it. I'm not going to sit here and say we see Gus Hawkins as a consistent starter, but if there's a true freshman that I think could step in the field, I think Gus Hawkins might be that most ready guy. But moving on to question number 4. Can you create an impact on special teams? Guys, it's kind of a depressing world to say when Kansas State special teams isn't living up to it. We haven't been special teams U the last couple of years. We haven't. And you can chalk that up to not having the right guy as a special teams coordinator or having an analyst in that room or whatever the case is. K-State hired a special teams coordinator this year. I forget the dude's name off the top of my head. I apologize, brother. That's on me. But Chris Kleiman identified that and said, we need to get back to the way K-State football was in the glory days of Kansas State football. We need to create separation on special teams because when you're starting drives from the 40, it gives you so much more of an aspect to get down the field rather than having to worry about converting 15, 16, 17 yards to start the drive off. Now, this is the question that people are going to ask. Who is that going to be? Who's going to be the one separating on special teams? Now, we've always been great on kickoff coverage, punt team coverage. Like, I don't worry about either of those being an issue. I think you're going to have guys like Ty Bowman that step up in that room and a couple of other dudes that should come to mind, but Ty Bowman is the one that jumps out immediately. But specifically on kick return and punt return, your number one guy is going to be Dylan Edwards. If Dylan Edwards can get the football, the dude's gone like that. You see the impact he can have on offense, defense, special teams. He's already done it at Colorado, and I think he'll do it again at K-State. But opposite Dylan Edwards is the question. Now, I mentioned Trey Davis earlier. This is an aspect where I think he could be really successful. The kid's a track guy. He's talented. He's super duper capable on special teams as well. Did it in high school a little bit here and there and had some big returns. I think you could potentially see Trey Davis back there if he's going to be using up a couple of games on that true freshman season. Otherwise, I think you'll see Keegan Johnson. He was back there last season, as well as some Trayshawn Ward games here and there. But my picks as of right now would be Dylan Edwards and Keegan Johnson back deep. You might see a mix in of Trey Davis. You might see Jacob Harris jump in there. He's super fast and quick. There's a couple of guys you could probably slot in there, but I truly do think K-State special teams is going to be night and day different than you've seen the last 2 seasons. Moving on to question number 3, and this is one that this is a great problem to have, I would say. This is a really good thing to have. Kansas State's defensive line room, specifically the defensive end, I should say. The defensive end position is loaded with dudes. They have so many talented names in that room. My question would be, who steps up in the defensive end room? Because there's 2 veteran guys that come to mind immediately in Brendan Mott and Cody Stufflebean. Then there's some new kids that are stepping into the block. New kids in the block reference, that was weird. Then there's some new dudes stepping into the room that have played a little bit of college football here and there, and there's young guys that haven't yet, but have that ability, man. So let me list off some names for you here. Jordan Allen, we know about Jordan Allen. Chidi Obiizer has been kind of an offseason hype guy where everybody's like, oh, I love Chidi. Can't wait to see Chidi play. Travis Bates, the former freshman All-American, FCS All-American, he steps in at the defensive end position. And then kind of another guy that just built up so much hype is Tobi Osunsomni. And I don't know who the heck's going to emerge out of this room. Of these questions, I try to give you my answer of who I think is going to be the guy that emerges or the guy that does XYZ thing. I have no clue. I think the starters that you have at the start of the season are going to be completely different by the time you make a bowl game or even a college football playoff run potentially, because there's going to be 6-7 dudes that can rotate in and see the field. And that's part of the idea that they've switched up the defensive line to try to have 2 or 3 defensive linemen in at all times. Early picks for me, I've talked about Tobi Osunsomni at length. I've talked about Jordan Allen at length. I think Chidi Obiizer is going to be that guy. I think all 3 of those dudes are going to be NFL players, to be honest. And the dude that I'm most intrigued to see how he fits in, I think Travis Bates could be a really sneaky name that hasn't been talked about enough this offseason. So a guy to keep in mind there. The 2 vets will both be playing a lot, Brendan Mott and Cody Stufflebean, so they're not necessarily underrated at this point, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the young guys. My second question, we're about to round out this list here, and guys, if you've watched this far, be sure and consider to hit that subscribe button. It does help us out immensely. My second question to ask you guys here, how will each player adjust that we brought into the transfer portal? So adjusting might not be the right word because each of these guys has played a lot of college football, but there are some that, hey, it's a new role. Hey, it's a new thing I'm taking on. It's a new place. It's different from where I've been. It's a different step up in competition. We know about Dylan Edwards. Dylan Edwards is the headlining of the class. But there's been some really solid additions, like Easton Kilty is going to be a guy that starts at left tackle in my mind. Jordan Riley plugging into that Kobe Savage departure, filling that role. And he's a veteran guy, played a lot of MAC football in the last couple of years. I think he's going to be a stud. Jordan Dunbar, the Rice transfer. Let us not forget Jordan Dunbar. He's a dude that could absolutely step in and compete for a starting job immediately. I've already talked about Travis Bates. How about my guy Dante Cephas? Shout out my guy Zach one time. Big fan of Dante Cephas and is pretty high on him as well. I am too. I think Cephas kind of has been maybe not slipping through the cracks, but I don't know if there's been enough conversation about Dante Cephas. Part of that's on me, just on the channel, not talking about the dude enough, but I think you added a lot of great transfers in. Alec Marenko, the UNM linebacker, I think is going to be penciled in as a day 1 starter, as well as a couple of these guys are, but it'll be interesting to see who emerges from that group. And the number one question I have to ask about the 2024 season, there's going to be some people that click off right as I say this, but the number one question I have, will we see some new jerseys and uniform combinations? Boys, before you click off, hear me out. I'm not sitting here saying we need to see a lavender helmet with a purple chest and gray pants or a purple helmet, black jersey, white pants. We don't need to do any of that. However, I'm also all for it. Whatever we want to do to switch it up, give me a little bit of a change, brother. The white on white with the purple outlines and the different mascots, like, this is what we need to do. Guys want to play in cool jerseys. Not saying the classic, like, okay, we've had the same jersey since the 90s. I'm not saying that people don't want that. There are people that want to play for the Dallas Cowboys out there. Shout out Cooper Beebe one time. Tradition is beautiful. Tradition's a great thing. Don't abandon tradition. However, you can add a little fire to that tradition. Add some switches up here and there. It doesn't have to be every game like KU where they roll out 15 different jerseys a season, but I would be thrilled to see the icy whites come back. I mean, think about what that's done for the team. Guys want to take photos recruiting in those jerseys. Guys want to be seen in those jerseys. I would love some lavender aesthetics, like add a pant stripe that's lavender. Add the outlines of the decals as lavender. Whatever you want to do. Lavender face masks would be crazy. There's some things we can do in this upcoming season that people should be all over. And I know what you're thinking. Joe, come on, we've lost in those alternates. We can't just keep doing this and keep losing. Folks, we got to play better football in different jerseys. That's what it is. I know that there's a lot of people out there that are superstitious, and I definitely have been at times, but dude, at some point, convincing yourself that a jersey's cursed so we should never wear it again and continue to look like the same thing we've had since the 90s, that's not always a great look, man. Once again, don't turn your back on tradition. However, look at the sales of everything lavender from Nike. They sold out immediately. They're like, oh, I should buy the other stuff. We're like, dude, give us more lavender stuff. Quarter zips, jackets, hats, shirts, like sweatshirts, everything you've ever wanted. Lean into some different things to spice up the traditions at times. I'm not saying turn your back on it, but why don't we see the logo with the big K and the state underneath it? Like, give us that on the side of the helmet. I think there's going to be some cool things like that, and truly, I think we'll see it. I don't know if it'll be in the non-con. I assume it would be, but maybe that Friday night against Arizona, that game would be sweet. Give us some all-whites hosting at home or some different purple-lavender combo. Like, there's going to be something to do, and when the time's right, we got to lean into it, folks. That's my question for the upcoming season. But guys, that's going to do it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I appreciate all the recent support on the channel as we continue to grow this thing and inch closer to the football season, my friends. I'm going to keep trying to get videos out. We're coming up on the 4th of July. I hope you all have a great 4th of July holiday. Stay safe, take care of yourselves. But that'll pretty much do it for today's video. If you have any questions that you want answered, or maybe if we want to run this back, do another top 5 questions with your questions, be sure and drop one in the comment section. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But that's going to do it for today's video. I hope you all are doing well. I will talk to you soon. Go Cats!